The first two features are extensions to fix-ups that existed before. So we have scale pages, and we are looking at some configuration of scale pages in pdfToolbox 16. In pdfToolbox 16, when you use scale pages, you specify the destination short edge and long edge. So you can specify what is the result size of your short edge and your long edge. But if you want to specify width and height, that means you have to do that in two configurations, one for portrait pages and one for landscape pages, because of course the short edge is different in both cases. One time it's the width and one time it's the height. And that is not always convenient, and then that is now more convenient in pdfToolbox 17. There is a new mode switch, and there you can switch between width, height, and then you can specify width and height and short edge, long edge, as it was in pdfToolbox 16. So just a convenience thing. The next fix-up is set color, and here it's not just convenience, it's really just something that wasn't possible before. So the set color fix-up allows you to specify the color of any object that is found by a filter, by an apply to filter. So if you find a vector rectangle, you can specify the color of the resulting rectangle, whatever the source color of that rectangle was. But an object cannot just be filled, it can also be stroked. And an object can be both at the same time. In pdfToolbox 16, it's only possible to specify the result color for the fill and the stroke at the same time. And now, guess what? In pdfToolbox 17, it becomes possible via a new scope selector to specify whether you want to set the color for fills and strokes, or only for fills, or only for strokes. That was brought to us from a support case. We wouldn't have thought about that, but yeah, it's needed, and now it's really there. Which brings us to the next feature.
Yes, so the next one are also small improvements or adjustments in the image export action. This action you can use to export PDF pages as various image types. And as you also can see here on the screenshot, this action provides a lot of parameters to specify this export. And one of this parameter is the option to limit the image export to a custom area. So for example, if you just want to have a specific area on your PDF page that you want to export, then you can specify that here using absolute coordinates, meaning you have to specify the left bottom at a start point and the right top as an endpoint of the custom area. And that sometimes could be a little bit tricky and is not always so easy to set up. And since we already provide different options in, for example, a pre-flight check or fix-ups to specify a custom area, we also wanted to give you these possibilities here in this image export action. So with pdfToolbox 17, you can see you have now this drop-down menu to specify a custom area, and you have now there three different options. The first one, of course, absolute coordinates remains, but in addition, you also can specify the area using an offset to the box edges. So you can set the offset for each page edge individually, moving them inwards using negative values and outwards using positive values. And then the last option is to specify a horizontal a horizontal offset and a vertical offset, and specifying a width and height for the custom area. And of course, this option is also available with the save as image action in the CLI. So we have this new parameter -- rect mode, and there you have these 3 options now as well. The next 2 features are related to processing steps. So if you are if you have PDF file or processing PDF files that have these processing step metadata in it, that could be interesting for you. So if you have these files and you want to modify them, often you don't want to do the fix-up execution on these processing step metadata objects. For example, if you want to convert everything to CMYK, usually you don't want to convert your cut contour or your varnish layer and so on. And for that cases, pdfToolbox already provided for some fix-ups where it made sense. This, I will zoom in here a little bit. This filter option in the sidebar, if you create a fix-up, where you can either exclude all processing steps or include them. So it's just easier to deal with them. And since it is useful in many cases, we enabled this option also for another or a huge range of different other fix-up types. You can see a list here. So for all of these fix-ups, you also have this side bar, this filter option in your sidebar now. And the next one, also related to processing steps, is a new fix-up type called modify processing steps, where you can modify existing processing step metadata independently of the layer name. And with pdfToolbox 16 or older, you could, of course, also add processing steps, or you could also change the layer name of processing step metadata layers. But just adjusting existing processing step metadata was simply not possible, and therefore we added this new fix-up type.
Yes. Next. There is a very small change, but it can be kind of useful if you have to use it. That's usually the case, I guess. But there is a check that you can do on ICC profiles in pdfToolbox. And this was something that at some point even was used in some of the Gantour group profiles. So you may have the question, are the ICC profiles in the PDF that I'm processing, are those the correct ICC profiles? And the way to do that is you can look at a checksum and then compare the checksum of the ICC profile and the file with a list of valid checksums. That sounds very easy in theory. In practice, it's a little bit annoying because you have to figure out the correct checksum to use. And so the question in the past was, what are the checksums for the profiles that I consider good? And how do I get them in that edit field in this condition? In pdfToolbox 17, there's a very small change, and that is that when you are in that condition, so when you're building a pre-flight check with this, you can click on this pop-up menu, and that shows you a list of the ICC profiles that pdfToolbox knows about. And then if you select one, that checksum for that particular profile is added into the edit field. And you can also just open an ICC profile or select an ICC profile from disk, and then it will calculate the checksum for that ICC profile. This is particularly useful because there is not one checksum, there are multiple different types of checksums, and this way you're always certain that you're using the correct one. Okay, much more interesting feature, not a very interesting sample file, so I will show it on something else. But there is a check in pdfToolbox, and so let me go to pdfToolbox 17. And then in my list of process plans here, I have something that is called bleed missing around cut contour. And let me open that. That uses a pre-flight check. This pre-flight check was already available in pdfToolbox 16. And as far as I know, nothing really changed to what you see here, but the algorithm that is behind it definitely changed. One of the elements, one of the questions that we got pretty quickly after the release of pdfToolbox 16 was that there were a number of cases where this pre-flight check was either pretty slow and or it didn't always work the way people expected it to work. For example, when you have a donut, that was this very simple image I had on the presentation. When you have a donut has a bleed, or is expected in many cases to have bleed on the outside and on the inside. And in pdfToolbox 16, that really didn't work very well. At the last PDF camp, we had a whole test and discussion about that to show what happened, and it was definitely not the correct thing that happened. In pdfToolbox 17, the algorithm behind this check has been changed, and so it is now faster. And the reason for that is it does less rendering, a little bit more image analysis behind the scenes, but less rendering. And also, so it's faster, and it also works in cases where it didn't work in 16. So in those cases where you have holes in a cut contour, it now also works. And the other thing is, and this I can show, is that in pdfToolbox, so let me run this, in pdfToolbox 16, what you would get as an answer, so if I go look at the trigger values here, in pdfToolbox 16, what I could see is that bleed was missing for irregular shapes or not, and I need to move it up a little bit there. So you basically got a binary answer. It was either true or not true, not enough bleed or enough bleed. In pdfToolbox 17, you can also see how much bleed was found. So in my check, I indicated I want 3 millimeter of bleed, and what pdfToolbox tells me here is that I get a hit because there is a point, and you can actually get the X and Y coordinates of the point. There is a point where there is not enough bleed. And what pdfToolbox has indicated is that there is only 2.84 millimeter, which is less than what I asked for. By the way, you can think that this X and Y is not very useful, but actually if you move the mouse over this file, at the bottom there, and it's a little bit hard to make you see it here, perhaps. Let me see what I can do there. So at the bottom there, you can see the actual coordinate. So if you want to understand where that point is with the bleed that isn't sufficient, you can look on that. And by the way, if you do a control click, you can also see it in millimeter, which is something I never knew until the last PDF camp. So the pre-flight check was already there, but in this case, it has been improved. And in pdfToolbox 17, you can now get the result faster. It will work in more cases, and you will also get to see exactly how much, what the exact situation is, how much bleed there is, and what was really missing. And then we go to complex paths.
Yes. So this is related to vector path and maybe the problem that you also face in your production workflows, that sometimes you have vector path or, for example, a die line or a cut line that is just too complex, meaning there are too many path nodes in there. So on my file, for example, I have this star line path, and if I run a pre-flight check in pdfToolbox, it tells me that it contains 81 path nodes, which is quite a lot for this simple shape. If I turn on the path preview, you can also see all the nodes in there, and a lot of them are just not necessary. And exactly for this use cases, we have now a new fix app called Simplify Vector Path. And you can see the UI here, and you have this distance parameter where you can specify a distance or a tolerance. And maybe to explain that so you understand it a little bit better, you also see this illustration here on the slide. If I have 3 path nodes, and the distance is the measurement between the middle path node and the straight line between the outer path nodes. And if the distance is that I set in my fix up is within this tolerance, this fix up will remove the middle path node. So it will simplify my path object. That's how it works. And if I run that on my star die line, you can see now after running the pre-flight check again, it reduces my nodes from 81 to 21. So I can also show you the node preview. I have now only the ones that I really need in my path object. One thing that you need to know if you want to use this fix-up is that this only works properly with polygons. So a path object can also include Bezier curves, as you probably know. And if you have objects that have this Bezier curve and you run this fix-up, it will convert it to polygons. And maybe if your cutting device can interpret Bezier curves, that's nothing you want to do. So you don't want to touch these vector paths. And our suggestion is that you can use the apply to filter in the fix up and add a pre-flight check number of curved lines in path object equals 0, which means it will only convert path objects without Bezier curves. So that's a nice way to limit it to only the ones that are built with polygons. And maybe to show you this also in action, I switch to pdfToolbox, and I have this nice cow die line that I downloaded from the internet. So this is something I found in there. And if I open the object inspector, let me try to zoom in a little bit. You can see that this path contains 551 nodes in there, which is quite a lot. So it's quite complex, and that's nothing we want to have. And for that, I have built a small process plan. Where is it? Here. Let me just open it to show you. So first, it's the fix-up that I just showed you, and then I also added a pre-flight check to check my result, how many nodes are in there in my result. So let me run test mode, and let's start with a distance with a really small distance or tolerance like 0.2. And if I say okay, and I switch also from the original to the result, you can't see any difference, which is nice because we, of course, want to have the same visual appearance. But if I go to my trigger values here in my pre-flight check, let me zoom in a little bit, you can see that the number of nodes in my path have been decreased quite a bit. So from 550 to around about 300, which is kind of nice. And maybe just to show you how this distance parameter works, let me just run it with a bigger value, and then you can see it will be simplified quite a lot. So you get this artsy cow now, which is also nice, but probably not what you want to do. And if I push it maybe to the limit, I probably get the most simplified result that I can get, which is a triangle.
Will not get milk anymore.
So that's how this fix-up works, and I hope that demo explains it a little bit better. And the next one is also a pretty small add-on to the place rectangle fix-up. So with that, you can place a rectangle, quite obvious. And you also have this radius parameter here. And if I set a value that is not 0, I will add a rectangle that have rounded corners. And with pdfToolbox 17, we add one small addition. So you have now a drop-down menu to set a line corner style. And there you can now also select bevels. So as a result, you can now also add rectangles that have this style of corner.
Very cool, thank you. Next topic is a bit complex. That is variable data print. So yeah, just background a bit. So variable data print, each page is different. And if each page is different, each page has to be calculated by the DFE or the RIP individually. And that is a problem with high-speed inkjet printers. They are much faster than the time a DFE would need to process a page. So we have a problem. Luckily, in variable data print, not everything needs to be calculated for each page. Normally, pages have repeating content. And so that repeating content you can also call static content, so content that is reused over pages and only dynamic parts are new. So for instance, a postcard will always be, most of the content will be the same and just the address will change. And only because that is the case, variable data print is possible with the speeds that we currently see. But it requires that the DFE can differentiate between what is static and what is dynamic. If the DFE couldn't do that, then it would still have to reprocess all the pages. And DFEs are actually quite smart these days, so they can do that. However, there are cases where that is not easily possible. So for instance, if the internal PDF structure is very complex with lots of nested X objects, the DFE could have problems. And if some dynamic content uses transparency or overprint while overlapping static content, it can, again, that area of the page need to be calculated again and again. So the DFE would either have to find out whether that transparency really overlaps with the background or not, or has to recalculate each and every page, and both would be time consuming. So the question is, if we couldn't help the DFE, so the DFE as of today normally does all of this intelligence by itself, but since we know the PDF file a bit, maybe it would be smarter if we could tell the DFE what is static and what is dynamic. And exactly that becomes possible with pdfToolbox 17. It requires that the DFE has, and that is indicated on the lower left here, it requires that the DFE supports a certain mode. So most DFEs support something like the pages that with the static content are separate from the pages with the dynamic content, or just the first pages in the PDF file have the static content, and after that only comes on the dynamic content. So if the DFE has such a mode, you could use this quick fix to get back from a PDF file where static and dynamic is combined into something where are they again separated. So probably as the PDF was created in the first place by using a template and the dynamic content. What the quick fix needs from you to know is the record length. So for a postcard, that would normally be backside and front side, so 2 pages. It could also be 1 page or a number of pages. So that really depends on the PDF file. So you need to specify the record length, and you need to specify, so pdfToolbox will analyze the PDF file to determine what is static and what is dynamic. And you can tell pdfToolbox what records to look at. So in this example here, and we use our token syntax, we tell pdfToolbox, look at every 100th record for your analysis. You could also say, just look at the first 10 records, or just use as the first and the last record, whatever. So that is up to you, and normally that depends on the number of records in your PDF file. So if you have 100,000 records, normally every 100 is a little too much, but if it's only 100 or 50, then every 100 it's probably not enough. So both values make a lot of sense. And now we should have a look at it. I have 2 examples. The first one I will really demo. That is a 2,500 page thing with 12 labels on each page. And the variable data really only are the QR codes that you can see here on each of the labels. We will have a look. And then after what I have just said, so what you would specify here, the record length is 1, and you would analyze every 100th record. That will make sense here. The other one I will not demo, just because it takes a couple of seconds. In this example, 5. And even more, it's easier to demonstrate just by looking at the PDF file page by page. We can't really easily see original end result. So I think it's easier to just use slides here. But the record length there is much longer. So we have 11 pages in this officially available pdfVT sample file. So the record length is 11 pages. And for a pdfVT file with 15,000 records, every 100th record takes some time. So it would be more advisable to just use every 1,000 record in this example. So,
Question?
Yes, please.
Because you mentioned pdfVT, the question is, and if you could repeat it, is this just for pdfVT files?
So the question was what relationship that has to pdfVT files, and whether it only works with pdfVT files. No, it doesn't. So in fact, a pdfVT file would specify for you the record length already. So no, it is definitely not limited to pdfVT files. It works with pdfVT file, as we will see in our example, but it doesn't need to be fed with pdfVT files, and that we will also see in our example. So that cow has survived that process. That's great. And that is my file here, and I will just jump from over the first 2 number of pages. So I'm not sure whether you can see that. So on each page I have the same labels again, and the QR codes are being modified on each page. And then I have my quick fix here, extract static content from VDP file. And that is, by the way, a quick fix that you have in pdfToolbox 17. I think it's in the prepress library, so it's ready to use there for you with exact the same settings that we are using here. So we are using a variable for the record length, and by default, we double check every 100th record. So let's just run it. So and now it analyzes every 100th record. So still it takes some time. And then we say, as I've said, page, the record length is 1. Now actually I specify the record length. Now it analyzes every 100th record and should come up with a result. I'm now on the 6th page here. So I should go back to the first page. And that is the first page now. And as you see, it doesn't have any QR codes, which makes sense. That is the expected result because the QR codes are dynamic. So this is all the static content. And on the other pages, some Belgium keystroke here. So whatever, on the other pages, I have my QR codes. Moving on. So, and that is just a summary of what we've just seen. So we have our original pages here looking pretty much the same with just different QR codes. And in the result, I have just the static parts on the first page, and on the other pages, only the dynamic parts. And that is the other file. I've made it so that we can see record by record in row by row, and then we see, oh, that's already the result. So our records are very similar. So the pages, the corresponding pages in the records are similar, but then there is also varying content here. For instance, the meals are different in the various locations. So there is dynamic part. And then if you tell the engine properly to annotate so that the record length is 11 and give it a number of appropriate records to look at, then that would be the result. So again, you have 11 preface pages with just the static content. And as you see, for instance, here, the fourth page in each record, some of them is empty, some have some yellow text here in front of this blue bar probably. So that is properly extracted and put onto these dynamic pages. That's that. And we seem to have a question.
Yes, 2 questions. Do we or does the GAN12 group have a test file that you can use to see whether a read-word device understands VDP, pdfVT?
The question was whether there is a test file that allows you to understand, to find out whether some application is compliant with pdfVT, right? This is really, the questions about pdfVT are always difficult because pdfVT has, most of the things in pdfVT are optional. So you have to have a dpart structure, but the dpart structure does not necessarily have to have specific information. So I think it would be hard to find out because again, there is not much that is really required in pdfVT. pdfVT is really more a standard that allows for communication between the creator and the processor. And if you say, okay, I want to find out whether my pdfVT data has proper record information and addressee information for postcards or letters, for instance, that is something you could create a test file for, but not a general file that would work for every use case of pdfVT.
And then Does this feature mean that you can save a normal PDF file as a pdfVT file?
No. So the question is whether this feature would allow you to convert a normal PDF file into a pdfVT file. And again, actually the same applies here. So what you could do, and that was already possible in pdfToolbox 16, to add a record structure to the PDF file. And as we've seen, that is already helpful in processing. Record structure means, in our simple examples here, you can specify new records start at every 12th page, yeah, or in our example. And that was already possible with another quick fix in pdfToolbox 16. You could also specify there a varying record length. So if you know you have invoices and the first invoice had 2 pages and then the one thereafter has 3 pages, and you know the structure, then you can add that structure to the PDF file. And that would already help the processing steps to take advantage of that data. And we've seen examples where only that just helped to speed up the output process. So that was possible, but if you would, as again, dpart metadata is just variable metadata information. You can add more metadata information by using the apply structures feature, but that all means you would have to have that data in the first place. Yeah, but just to summarize, this has to do a bit with pdfVT because it both are dealing with variable data, but it is not directly connected. If you want, it is an alternative to, if every VDP file would be a proper pdfVT file, we might not need that. I'm not sure, but maybe not. Anyway, so we should move on and talk about PDF syntax issues. And as we all may have experienced, not every PDF is well formed. That is not often, it's not always a problem in printing, as long there might be issues in the PDF file, in the tagging structure or whatsoever, and that doesn't necessarily have an impact on rendering. If it has an impact on rendering, print service providers will suffer. And because we understand that, and that is not new, we in pdfToolbox try to repair known issues, severe issues that are so severe that they have an impact on rendering whenever we know about them. We can't fix unknown problem, but we try to fix all known problems that we get becoming aware of in support. That's not new. That normally happens just silently when you apply some fix-up on a PDF file. But in some cases, we've decided this only happens if you explicitly ask for it, either because there might be a situation where you don't want that, or more often because that will take some time. Not everything can just happen on the fly. And then there is a quick fix resave PDF, and that will repair and rewrite the content stream. That has a checkbox, repair image streams, which then will also decode and encode all image streams, because that will definitely take some time and will not just happen automatically. So if you have corrupt image streams, that checkbox can help. And I should mention it here, although that is not really new in pdfToolbox 17, because there was and is something new in the most recent release, in a hotfix that we've released in February, that repairs a certain JPEG issue that shows up in PDF files with embedded JPEG images created by a very widely used online design tool. What is new in pdfToolbox 17, though, is a new profile that checks for syntax issues. So you have in prepress library a new profile that is called PDF syntax checks, and that summarizes all the various checks that we have in pdfToolbox that check for syntax issues and only for those ones that are severe enough to potentially have an impact on rendering.
Would you run this quick fix on every file or only if a quick check or syntax checks reports a hit related to automated processes?
It's a good and difficult question. So normally I wouldn't run it on every file because it takes time. But it's hard to say. It probably also depends on what files you have to process, whether you have repeating customers or customers that use widely used online layout applications or quality of layout applications is used. This is really hard to say. If we would have known, we would have decided for you and made it implicitly run on every operation. I think this really needs to be decided case by case or workflow by workflow. You should make sure, of course, to only run it once in a workflow. That is one thing I could say. And normally it doesn't make sense to check beforehand because the checking again will take time. So then before applying it only after a check has been used, then I would probably rather run it every time. What you could do in addition to use this profile, because that might also find issues that we cannot repair. And if you find those issues, send us a file so that we can enhance our repair mechanisms. Next one. If there aren't any questions, I think it's the last one that I have, and it's also a bit complex. Question here or requirement here from support was we want information in the JavaScript object and the pdfToolbox JavaScript object about the object stack at a certain location. So the user knows a location on a PDF file and wants to understand what objects are there and what properties do their objects have. It is, in fact, somewhat possible already, but there are a few issues, and we've closed these issues in pdfToolbox 17. So the first missing piece is we have a new check now, is at location. There was already is in custom area, but that would find only objects that are completely inside of the specified area. This one works similar, but it really looks at two coordinates with a bit of tolerance, and then sends you the object stack at that location back. And here we've used that on a sample file, and we have a stack of 3 objects there. And in the result view, I could already see all the properties of these objects. But in the process plan, you don't, of course, want to open the result view, so you want to access that information. That is possible by creating a JSON report. So from the check that we've used is at location, we would create a JSON report. And then we want to have that JSON report inside of our pdfToolbox JavaScript object. And that is the other thing that we did. That is possible in JavaScript. We have the file path, read the file, and I process now, what is the word? Parse it into a JSON and into an object and to a JavaScript object. So, and there is a shortcut app get JSON. And this takes a parameter, and that it's a path to the report that we've just created. And then this object that we've just specified here has all the information that we need and that was present in the JSON report that we've created. So, and that was it.
Okay, I think this is the last one, if I'm not mistaken. Last feature for pdfToolbox 17, this one has to do with pattern handling. So you know where this is used in markets. You could think wallpaper, I could think curtains, probably other industrial print things. I don't think I want curtains with this many strawberries, but you certainly could. And what they are using in those scenarios is different types of patterns. And we've implemented support for the 3 most common ones, which there are different names that are being used, but you can call them full drop, which is like a normal step and repeat. You have something called half drop, which means that each next column is shifted slightly down compared to the previous column. Interestingly, it's not always half down. You can do it 33% or whatever. And then you have a brick pattern. If you have a house or you've ever seen a house, then you recognize this. So it's also shift, but then each row is shifted in comparison to the row above. We've implemented support for that. What does that mean? Well, let me go to pdfToolbox. And so while this is a nice repeating file, I don't think I want it. I want this one. When you think about patterns, there are 2 different concepts. There is what you can call a base tile. And this is a good example of a half drop base tile. If I would do a standard step and repeat on this, it would not work because, as I said, the columns are shifted. This is a fully repeatable tile. Yeah, but so if I have a tile like this and I want to cover an area with that, then the question is, how do I go about that? And what I can do is I'll show you an example. So you have a process plan here again. And in that process plan, I have a new action, and the action is called repeat pattern. And what I can specify is what is either the sheet width and sheet height. So I can say this is wallpaper, so I know it's going to be 50 centimeter wide, for example. And I want a certain height that is then going to be repeated. I could also say I want a number of columns and rows, although with these patterns that's not always that easy to understand what you then get. You have the types of patterns, and so here you have to choose what your file is actually made for. In my case, it's a half drop one. As I said, it doesn't have to be 50%. It can be a number of other things. And then the action also allows you to say, do you want bleed? And do you want white space around the trim box? Or around the bleed, actually. So if I say tests, I get this. So where I have this tile, so if you imagine what was done, pdfToolbox takes that tile and then places it to the right repeatedly, and each time it places it, it goes a little bit down, and then you end up with a perfectly covering pattern across the space that you specified in that action. So you're starting from something that is not repeatable by itself or not easily repeatable through a step and repeat, and you're covering a whole space, but you do need to know what type of pattern you're dealing with. The second thing that you can do is I could have something that is repeatable, but that doesn't have the proper, where is it? Here. That doesn't have the proper amount of bleed. So my pattern is okay, but it doesn't have the amount of bleed that I want. And then when I do that, and then I probably would be nice if pdfToolbox would remember this setting, by the way. I can create bleed by extending the pattern. So rather than doing mirroring or local stretching, or what else do we have? The pixel repetition. Here it assumes that this is a repeatable pattern, and it duplicates the original around it to create perfect bleed without breaking the pattern. And you have examples here of a full drop and then a half drop. That's the one we looked at before, and then a brick tile. And in each of the three cases, you generate an amount of bleed. And because the assumption is that the original file is going to be repeatable, the only thing you need to specify here is the amount of bleed that you want to create. So you can do two things. You can take something that is not perfectly repeatable and then repeat it across a certain area. And in the process, you can also already create the bleed that you want. Or if you have something that is repeatable, but it was created without bleed or with not enough bleed maybe, then you have a fix-up, generate bleed by pattern extension, that allows you to create the bleed. And in that case, because the assumption is that it's already repeatable, you don't need to specify anything other than the amount of bleed that you want.